because every corner we got to, we were overtaking somebody. The cars again have so much power that as they're coming across the white grid markings coming onto the straight, that's what flicked the thing sideways.
Clip that race, so send that to them.
I got really emotional in I did a little Facebook live thing, and we ended up having, not stop it, but I just had to take myself away and have a little bit.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Driving Talk podcast powered by Icon with myself, Robert Lewis, and co-host Max Coates. And Max is actually in the hot seat this week because we're wrapping up 2024. This is part 2 of our 2024 Unwrapped series. And Max, we are going to delve into your season in the Porsche Sprint Challenge GB. It's been a hell of a year, isn't it?
Yeah, it really has. And it's cool to be able to have a bit of a chat about it. If I'm honest, I'm not sure I could have recorded this much before now. And as you can see, for anybody looking, it is Christmas tree season. So
yeah,
10th of December now. And I think I'd have probably really struggled to talk about this year in review properly much before now. It was, and that's weird when it's been so successful.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, the end of the season was really tough, and I've struggled with it more than most really know, really. So it's been quite a hard end to the season, even though we've been possibly the most successful I've ever have been. So yeah, weird one, really.
It is a bit of a weird one, and obviously, we are going to cover the emotional roller coaster that was a very, very competitive championship fight. But we started out the year with a Porsche Sprint Challenge championship that was split into effectively 2 grids, 2 different cars, because you went from the original Cayman GT4 to the newer spec car. So this has got the engine from the Carrera Cup car. It's a lot faster, the lap time's a lot lower. But the class, sort of the class and the caliber of the drivers, very much stayed at its highest, and it was a championship that was very tightly fought.
Yeah, and actually, I think it's been a really good progression point because when myself and the Graves team, you know, where we've grown to know each other, where we came to it was first off into the club sport, and actually, I think the club sport for a single make series is possibly a better car, only really because it's just cheaper to run and you don't actually need, without a shadow of doubt, the RS is a better car.
Yeah,
it's faster, it's got more aero, it's taken more seriously because it's bona fide a GT4 car in its current trim. It's bloody fast, it's quicker than the GT4 car because we're unrestricted. It's not far off GT3 pace, it's not. Well, it's a bit off GT3 pace. It's not a million miles off GT3 Cup car pace, and it's a lot. You know, it's a halfway house really, almost in between GT4 and GT3. So the car itself is awesome, and actually been a massive step up for me. I think in the credibility of the series. Actually, I think, you know, when they came last year around the circuits, people went, "Oh, them little Porsches are quite quick." This year they've gone, bloody hell, them little Porsches are rapid. Like, they're quick, they sound fast, they look fast, and bloody hell, they're the real deal. You know, we've been quicker than touring cars at every circuit we've been to. You know, it is a quick bit of kit. So yeah, the car was new, and yeah, some of it was carried over from the old cars, but there was quite a bit to learn. The car in the wet is a little bit more of a handful than it was with the old car. Sort of at 425 brake horsepower and a lump less torque, it was much easier to get the power down in the old car. And that is something that definitely caught me out in qualifying and only really qualifying, to be honest. The first time I drove it in the wet, I'd worked it out after that, but the first time I was like, what the hell's going on here? I was sliding around everywhere. But yeah, it was a bit of a baptism of fire for everybody, but more so or actually probably more to the point, less so for Team Parker because they'd had a car previously, so they did know it a little bit. And Seb Hopkins, who ultimately became my chief title rival, he'd driven the car for a year or 2 years in British GT beforehand. So those guys had a little bit of an advantage coming into the start of the season.
Well, they obviously would have had a bit of knowledge on setup and how to really get the best out of the car.
Yeah, and it is got to take it into account a little bit because we run on a Michelin tyre versus a Pirelli tyre that they will run in British GT, and within Sprint Challenge we're fixed in terms of our setup on damping. We're controlled in different ways to what the BOP is in British GT, so they're at an advantage from having run the car, but it's not a significant advantage as if that was just running open BOP spec. So because we were all balanced in a different way, it did negate a bit of that, but I'd rather have had time in the car than not.
Absolutely, and the calibre of the drivers are sort of exacerbated as well by the calibre of the team. I'm always impressed in any Porsche paddock by the calibre of the teams that are running the cars, the likes of obviously Team Parker. Graves has stepped up and done a fantastic job with running yourself and Ethan Hamilton starting last year, and you have Toro Verde, you've got like Xentech, Clean Racing as well. Very professional setups going into the Porsche Sprint Challenge. You'll have a few of them that obviously also run Carrera Cup programs as well, and very much are under the Porsche umbrella of things. Was it quite daunting for you going in up against that, or did you kind of relish the challenge?
No, I didn't find it daunting. Like, I think I've been around the Toka package for so long that I don't really find that a daunting prospect. I found it exciting and a good challenge, and without a shadow of a doubt, Team Parker were the people that we were all looking at going, them guys are going to be fast. And actually, I think what was quite nice, end of season awards, Stuart Parker was up on stage, and he sort of started out saying, like, we thought Tom Bradshaw and Toro Verde were going to be our main opposition, but actually Max was. And it was quite nice to kind of
you got the nod.
Know that I'd got the nod. It was like a bit of a fair bloody play. He made it hard. we had to have a proper go at beating him and chuck everything at it because he was having a proper go at it. So it was. I think having that is great for everybody. It raises the level of everybody's team when you're operating with a prestigious brand, and you have that caliber and quality of team that are in it from a Carrera Cup level, because it makes everybody have to operate at the highest possible standards. And that's only a good thing, whether it is drivers or team or whatever. So I definitely enjoyed that challenge.
And Graves themselves had tremendous success this year as well. So they pushed for 3 championships and got 2 out of 3. So Jacob Toffs and
Cheers.
Jonathan Beat. No, I mean not in that way. So arguably, you were still there battling at the front, and to me, Max. I mean, we'll come to what I said to you a couple of days afterwards in a minute, but just congratulations as well to Jonathan Beeson and Jacob Toffs winning their respective classes outright. A superb job by them. But in the end, for yourself, knowing who you're up against in Team Parker and Toro Verde, and the calibre of drivers in Seb Hopkins, Will Jenkins, Tom Bradshaw, your teammate Ethan Hamilton, some fantastic drivers in there. There was 1 point in it.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, when you look at it, Graves are in for 3 championships that we could have possibly won this year as a team. They won both AM championships in both classes, and we missed out on the overall championship by a point.
Yeah,
nobody else got that close to it. Not across the board, across different teams. In the 2 AM categories, it was a clean. Actually, there isn't any team that actually challenged. Thinking about this now, there isn't any team that challenged for all 3.
No.
Graves are the only ones who had cars at the front of all 3 of those aspects of the championship, and the only one that we didn't have a the only one we didn't challenge for was one where we didn't have a car. So anywhere that we did run, we ran at the front, and that's that's really good testament for the team.
And the one thing the one word we haven't mentioned yet, and I think it's probably the most important word that can kind of categorise your season, is consistency. And I will admit, now I'm not being the podcast that's going to slate other podcasts, but I had to turn off the Autosport review of the season podcast when they sort of said, well, Seb Hopkins and they were really fast, and Max was just there or thereabouts, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm screaming at the radio, like, because he was consistent. That's a good racing driver. That's what Anthony Reid did. That's why he was considered a brilliant touring, because it was consistent. You stayed out of the mire. I think you scored at every single race. You scored points.
Yep. Yeah, as one of only drivers to finish every race of the season. Certainly Seb didn't, Will didn't. And had they finished every race of the season, they might well have beaten me. Well, they didn't. That's kind of the point.
Exactly.
Tom didn't. Ethan didn't. Toby didn't. So I don't think there's any other pro driver that finished every race of the season. I did, until the last. So Brands was the first round where I didn't go on the podium once, which was really annoying. But the only other times that I'd been off the podium was at Alton.
And that was,
I think, in one race.
So Alton, wasn't that the round where you had a bit of a clash with Seb and he got the penalty?
Yeah, but I still finished on the podium in that race.
So what actually happened in that race leading up to it, and what the incident itself? What happened? Was it a bit of a clumsy challenge? Was it something that just went a bit too far? Or,
to be honest, we didn't have the pace at Alton Park. It was a bit of a different track to Snetterton. We really struggled. We threw all sorts at it setup wise, and we were going wild in between sessions trying different stuff. And by different stuff, I mean like
radical.
One end of the scale to the other. I was like, I haven't come here to finish fourth, so if you think it might work, put it on and let's see what happens. And some of it worked, some of it didn't. But like, actually, probably most of it did work. But yeah, Seb was quicker than me. He caught me up, but I knew that as long as I defended into the right places, that I'd be sound. So, he was all over the back of me. I hit the brakes. I left half a car width on the inside, which I basically knew as long as if I was there, he couldn't get past me. He wasn't going to get through the chicane. Yeah, it was covered. So, and I saw him go from left to right. I was like, oh no. But at that point, I was committed into what was going on. So, I'd already hit the brake. He tried to switch back. There was no space for him to go. So I knew he had to go on the grass. So I knew he wasn't going to stop. But wasn't anywhere I could go, because I'd already braked as late as I could brake to make the corner. So, apart from trying to open the door up to give him more space, then, there wasn't anywhere else to go. So yeah,
Crunch.
He careered over the curb. Bang, goes quite a hefty damage bill. But I was annoyed, but I finished the race. I lost a position.
Yeah.
When you look back at it, if I'd finished second in that race, not third, I'd have won the championship. But if Seb had stayed third, he'd have claimed more points than what he would have done had he not got the penalty.
Yeah, because I think he lost 6 points to get the penalty, didn't he?
He did, yeah, and he also DNF'd the race and didn't score any points. So that was quite a big blow for Seb, really. But yeah, that's what happened. But you know what? We had our judicial afterwards. Seb got a pretty big penalty, which I felt he deserved, and he took it on the chin. In fairness to him, he came and apologised before we went in. He held his hands up when we went into the judicial and said, "It was my fault. That's it." So
respect to him for that, for putting his hands up. He's come to see you.
Yeah, I mean, there was so many people. I've had, as we spoke about pre hit and record, I've had a few rivalries in my time, and not everybody does that.
No.
So actually, I probably gained more respect from him from the incident than I did, not because of the way that he handled it. And Seb's a young lad. but he handled it really well. Not the actual incident, that bit wasn't great, but the actual aftermath, was what it was. Seb was sound. I had no problem with him as a result.
Racing at Croft. Talk us through that weekend.
Yeah, but I tell you what, like when you were on about the pre-season, just let me give you a little Croft thing pre going up. So when we got the car, we took it for a little shakedown at Croft and ran around the track, and we were only on the sort of smaller layout at the front, so we just wanted to go make sure nothing fell off, which Porsche did. Everything is pretty good, to be fair. So
this was a brand new car, wasn't it? This wasn't a second-hand car that you bought. Car. This was brand new from the Porsche factory, which is at Reading. Straight to you.
Yes, it comes from Germany to Reading, and then Carl Graves' team manager picked it up, and then where are they? Our GPS on this arm here. So Carl brought it straight to us, stayed at our house overnight. We took it to Croft, just gave it a little shakedown. Yeah, all's good. And then we took it to our GPS to go and get wrapped. So it's the third time in my career I've only ever had 3 new cars. So Ginetta Juniors, 2018 in the Clios, and then this year in the Sprint Challenge, and actually the 2 years when I've had a brand new car.
Yeah.
Finished second in the championship, very close to winning the championship. So, it does kind of show you what, the advantage, I guess, of having the money to be able to afford to have new and so on and so forth. But yeah, it was cool. So it was me and Dad, and there's been a few moments when doing this with my old man is a pretty cool thing. So we had Croft, pretty much to ourselves. We just ran round, and it was cool. We weren't going overly mental with it, so it was just a shakedown. But I came past the pit wall. I remember coming in, and I was like, excuse my language, but fucking hell, this is fast. and my dad was like, I know. I stood on pit wall. He was like, it's like that. When you come past, it's like, bloody hell, it's got some sound, it's got some bass, and you feel the draft off it, and it is like, this is a proper race car.
Yeah, proper race car. And obviously you started a new role at Croft, at the circuit itself. So did that kind of add a little bit to you? It's a very special place for you anyway. It's your home circuit. You've grown up just down the road. Did that add just that little bit extra for you this year as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's really, really cool to be working at Croft and racing at Croft. So new role there as business development manager, which is good. It's been going well. So I've actually been there all year, but we only really announced it in the last couple of weeks. So it's just nice to be so close to a track and have somewhere that I can really feel like there is a racetrack that I call home.
Fantastic, dude. Fantastic. Well, okay, so back to the championship. Now, I kind of want to know. You go. No, not at all. You go into the year, think focused. Right, championship. I'm fighting for this championship. At what point during the year did you kind of think to yourself, "This is on here. We could well do this"?
Yeah, actually, round 1. I know that's really early, but I expected to be a bit further off it. Round 1. I think we were probably helped by it being wet, which I'm definitely. I don't feel like I'm better in the wet than I am in the dry. I just feel like other people are not as good in the wet. So, I think that definitely helped us at round 1 with it being predominantly a wet race weekend, and it probably highlighted where we were on dry pace into Alton Park. So, yeah, I would say I felt like it was doable from round one because of how close we were, but I also realised there was a big bulk to do. But probably realistically leaving Croft. We kind of knew that the second half of the season would be stronger for us than the first half, and that we would have a gap to naturally close to realistically Seb and Team Parker, with their kind of knowledge and experience of the car beforehand. And if you look at points mid-season to the end, I think they're actually pretty much the same. I think we were maybe only a point behind in the championship or something like that, or maybe championship leader leaving Croft. It was quite close, but yeah, Croft, I would say, I felt like the tide was turning a little bit, and on dry pace. Felt basically, if it was a wet race, I felt like I was the guy to beat. If it was a dry race, then Parker were a little bit quicker straight out of the box. First two laps, we probably reeled them in the middle of the race, and then they pulled away from us a little bit at the end. So it was something that we were trying to work on, in where in the race we were gaining and losing time. And it's quite difficult because certainly in the first half of the season, we weren't allowed our video footage back.
What's that?
So I think it's so that we can't then share it online.
Because I know they're a bit funny with ITV rules, haven't it? Because it's broadcast on ITV, and you've got to be a bit careful with that stuff.
Yeah, so basically 7 days after the race weekend, we can start to share elements of footage, but not loads of it. So it's quite capped in terms of what we are allowed to share anyway. But it's also from a Porsche standpoint, if they just don't want social media getting out of hand with people who said he did this, here's some footage from this. You do see it at different levels of motorsport where it can get pretty and it happens at club level motorsport, and it's not professional.
No, it's not.
It's just not. It doesn't end up putting anybody in a good light, and Porsche is a big organization and it doesn't want that. So
no.
It just goes.
I mean, just
that's how they do it.
Just as a sidetrack, just to add to that. So, the Porsche brand, and it is very much, as well as having the Carrera Cup and Sprint Challenge there as a racing championship, the whole brand aesthetic of the weekend is very much evident whenever you go into the Toka paddock. I mean, we're very well aware that the touring cars is effectively the main show. Everyone's there to watch the touring cars, but the fact that this is a factory-backed series, and the structure that they bought for hospital. I mean, they had the big sort of house that looked like that looked like it was made of offcuts of the Michelin Man. The big bouncy castle.
Bouncy castle. Yeah.
So they had that for a few years, and then this year it looks like they've literally bought a beach house that Lawrence Llewellyn put together, and they stick that up as sort of the corporate hospitality box. It looks so good.
It is ridiculously good. It's a massively strong part of our sales package for sponsors going forward into next season, and has been this year. It's totally blown people away. It is getting towards Formula One levels of hospitality at Pro Touring cars. And actually is part of the attraction behind the Porsche brand, and being a Porsche racing driver. Is that it isn't just a race of Porsche, but when you come, it's like, this is a really cool thing to be a part of. It's not just Porsche racing cars; it is
the brand.
Porsche. It is. They come with a big show. They put a great thing on, and I think that's reflected in the numbers racing in the series, across Sprint Challenge and across Carrera Cup, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get back to the title round this year. I think my favourite race weekend on a personal level, watching the Sprint Challenge. I wasn't there, unfortunately. I couldn't make it that weekend, but it was the changeable conditions at Silverstone.
Yeah,
that looked like so much fun, especially coming through Copse Corner. It looked so wild at times. Talk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was my strongest race weekend. I was joint top point scorer that weekend with Will Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was pretty mega, to be fair. I'm trying to remember how the races all unfolded, but we got through to the really sort of pointy end of the championship at that point.
Well, it was the penultimate round, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And to be fair, I had a really good one. Seb had a bit of, not a stinker, but it just wasn't. It wasn't the best few races for him. He won the first race actually, and I think that was in the wet as well. So I was quite surprised when he then didn't really have the pace in the other races. It was a bit weird how it sort of flip flopped and changed. So I think I was third in the first race. I think Seb and no, I was second. That's it. So Seb and somebody else got away. I'd slipped back a little bit off the start. Just got a load of wheel spin. Didn't really work out for me. Or some traction control issue off the start. So basically, I dropped back and then was coming through. And I could tell I'd kind of got the measure of them, and I was about level on pace with Seb at the front, so that was good. And then last lap, me and Will Jenkins caught a back marker, and the back marker didn't really help, but for me, Will just made a bit of a cock up of it as well. He went steaming into a move that he really didn't need to do, and it sent him into a half spin and gave me the place. And when you speak about Autosport's review of things and them kind of going, Max was there or thereabouts. I wasn't there or thereabouts. I was always there. I was always at the front. And I didn't make mistakes like that really until the second to last round of the year. And it is not making those mistakes throughout a season is what wins you a championship. I still won multiple races over the season. And was always one of the fastest drivers, whether being qualifying or race trim. So, that's we were right up there, and Silverstone was mega. So that was the first race. Then we had two on Sunday. So the first race on Sunday for me was probably my favourite race of the season. And the last couple of laps with scrapping with Tom Bradshaw was just
that looked like so much fun.
It was mental. I just enjoy watching the onboard of it. So I'm like, what is going on? So again, I think I got another bit of a bad start, but I'd kind of like worked out a few things that I was doing differently to everybody else in the wet that just meant I was so much quicker. So came back through the field. Tom was up the road, and any gap that I had to people, I generally closed down very, very quickly. I had to pass Seb, who was shaping up to really be my sort of like big title rival at the time. With Tom quite close behind at that point. I had to pass Seb early doors. Then I had to get past Will. And I had to close those gaps, and I closed those gaps more or less immediately. Then got past Will onto the back of Tom, and then me and him were like, just to be honest, we couldn't see. That was the big problem. Was we got to back markers, and there was so much spray that you couldn't really work out where you were.
Yeah.
So you were moving around on the standing water, but as much as anything, I couldn't tell where other cars were in front of Tom because I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there because there was spray. So I was like, I can't really go steaming in on a move because I've no idea whether they're going to come through that spray and just hit somebody. And at that stage of the championship, I wasn't.
You can't afford to then.
I wasn't going to risk something so crazy. And with and I also didn't really know where Tom was going to go because every corner we got to, we were overtaking somebody. So it also meant that the overtaking opportunity was almost to try and I had to go almost like with the back marker and almost go through them to try and make a move happen. So it was always going to be really difficult. And then we come on to the last lap, and I managed to get Tom. So my teammate JB was ahead. I don't know whether he really realised we were there or not. He sort of coming after was like, "Did he get it? Did I help you?" And I was like, "You did a bit." He'd sort of like he'd he'd brake. Tom had gone in. Tom couldn't get the exit, and I got the exit and got past him in a straight line. And then we sort of came into the last complex of corners, and I'd been trying to get up the inside of Tom at Luffield the whole way through the race. I just really struggled. So basically, anytime if he went wide, I'd go tight. But when I went tight, I couldn't get the traction on the way out of the corner because there's just so much power in those things that he just then drove back past. So to be honest, I went into the last corner thinking, I know he can't drive up the inside of me. I'm safe. I've got it. So I sort of half covered it. And actually that was a worst possible thing to do because then I was also on the iffy line.
Yeah.
Where when he'd just been going wide and going round it, then he always had the drive off the corner. And of course, because it was my first time doing it, I didn't know that. And Tom got me straight back, and we crossed the line like neck and neck. But it was like turning in, I was like, I know Tom's there. I tried to give him a squeeze, I couldn't. I thought it was right at the start of each race. Woodcote, so onto the start finish straight was flat.
Okay.
If you're on the right line, it was just flat.
Yeah.
But I had a huge moment there. And when I say huge moment, I mean proper. Might have even been the first race when I tried to take it flat and it wasn't. So yeah, I was like, to do it flat, you need to be on the right line. And I was definitely not on the right line. I had a car up the inside, and the tyres were screwed. So I was like, there's no way it's flat in the last lap. But I think the problem was that the cars, again, have so much power that as they're coming across the white grid markings coming onto the straight, that's what flips the thing sideways. And that's what I mean is like when you go to this power of car that I've not been in before, a Clio or a Mini wouldn't have done that. Where now I feel like because I've experienced this level of power and grip and so on and so forth, I could go and jump into a GT3 car and be a hell of a lot closer to where I would need to be than if I was coming from a Clio or a Mini or whatever, because we're so much closer to what that pace is and what the power does. Which side of the grid you start from made a difference. And like that's like Formula One level stuff where you go in. There's more grip on that side or not more grip on that side. But like when you've got 200 brake horsepower, how much grip you have on the side of the track makes
not a lot of difference.
No. When you've got 525 brake horsepower, it makes a difference. You can't get a power down. It doesn't go. It just spins up. So, it was, the Silverstone round was pretty epic. To have three podiums, and to be honest, be gutted that I didn't win a race.
Wasn't for the lack of trying.
It was mega. No, it was mega.
It was
so much fun, and I got out of that one with Tom and was like, do you know what? I didn't win it, but
I think
bloody hell, I enjoyed that.
What that was a fantastic advert for the championship. If you're Porsche watching that, and you're on the board of directors or whatever, and you're watching that series go toe to toe, and you kind of want to describe to someone that's never watched it before to go, what is Porsche Sprint Challenge? Click that race, send that to them.
Watch that one. Well, fortunately, the global head of Porsche Motorsport was at Silverstone that weekend.
Fantastic.
So the guy that runs like Super Cup and that sort of thing. So I was like, that's good. he's seen a good showing of what I can do. So I'm glad he picked Silverstone to come to. It was it was probably from my own performance my best weekend of the year.
So let's rip the Band-Aid off. We go to Brands Hatch, a circuit that you really enjoy. I think it's even on your bio on the Porsche Sprint Challenge website. You love going to Brands Hatch GP.
Yeah.
And before we get started, there's something I'm hoping you remember. So the year before your first year in Porsche Sprint Challenge, I popped down to see you on the weekend, and you gave me a lift back up to where my car was. I took some kit with me. I think that's when we did some podcasting. You seemed very philosophical that day because we were chatting on the way up, and you said, "You know what? That last race that I had in the Cayman, I just took it in and enjoyed it because." I think you were maybe not quite at a crossroads, but you were thinking that this may not happen this year.
Yeah, Yeah, I got really emotional in my I did a little Facebook Live thing, and we ended up having not stop it, but I just had to take myself away and have a little bit of a moment. Um, because what we do is really cool, and I don't take it for granted. I'm here because of all these people that you see on my top, and many more outside of that. And it's not a given that it's always going to happen. And being totally honest, 2023 was, you know, the budget is a bit more is a jump. It is a little bit of a jump, and this year has been another jump again. And to be competitive in this series, you have to spend money.
Yeah.
And you have to sometimes spend more than what you budgeted for. And sometimes you don't always have that. So I'm in a different stage of my life now. I now own a house. That I wasn't in a couple of years ago, and I was very realistic that my ability to be able to help fund a bit of my racing from my own earnings and stuff was getting to a point that I couldn't sustain that forever. So it's very realistic that 2024 might not happen. And if I couldn't raise enough budget, then it wouldn't. So yeah, I remember the last race. I kind of knew I wasn't going to win the championship. Maybe halfway through the race, something like that. I clearly didn't have the pace, or actually maybe he was even out of it before the last race even started. So I just enjoyed it. It's like when do you get to drive this car around Brands Hatch GP?
No.
Don't do many days at Brands GP.
No, don't.
Any days that you do at Brands GP are sort of golden days. It's like I'm racing a Porsche at Brands GP. This is bloody cool. And if this is where my racing career ends, then I'm gutted, devastated that it has. But what a cool way to go out. So I just really enjoyed it, and maybe enjoyed the last race at Brands more in 2023 than I maybe did in 24.
Okay, so you go into the weekend with a significant, quite a healthy little points gap.
Yeah,
and I'm guessing for you, and we all watched it. The turning point was Druids. That race on the outside.
Race 2. Yeah, yeah. First race is okay. Do we maybe lost 4 points or something like that to Seb? So it's still. I think I'd kind of worked out that we couldn't afford to have 4 points every race, but it was okay. So yeah, race 2 was the turning point, like you say.
And it was so. From your point of view, you went for a move around the outside. You were trying to capitalise on your start and get ahead of your title protagonist, or at least put the cat amongst the pigeons, because you know that after a lap or two, you can get into your groove, you can defend properly, and just either hold that buffer you've got in the points standings or build it.
Yeah, exactly that.
And then you had the contact. So when the contact happened and we saw your car go up in the air, did you think at that point it was maybe game over for the race, or was it okay? Let's just crack on. What kind of went through your mind at that moment?
Yeah, well, I sort of I remember now what happened. The first race I made an awful start. I kind of got caught out with the low sun a little bit, and I couldn't really work out whether the red lights were on or off or what was going on. So I didn't kick into anti-stall, but I didn't really go. The start launch control sequence didn't quite go right, so I lost a load of places off the start. I gained some back, but not enough. But I think we maybe finished 4th in that race.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
and 4th or 5th, and I was like, I felt like I had the pace to beat Tom, and I'd felt like that from testing, I felt like we were as quick as Seb and Will, maybe a little bit quicker. What so many people don't see when they watch the ITV footage is what happens on a Friday or qualifying.
No, and that's the thing, because they only see you in these pressure cooker moments of the race. They don't see the work leading up to it and the issues leading up to it.
No, and it plays a part in the whole season. And I realise I've skirted away from your question again.
No.
But it's an important part of it, because the tyre situation on Friday is massively pivotal to the whole weekend pace. So the budget that I had this year didn't really allow me to have much more in terms of tyres than what we were allowed for racing. I could budget, well, I didn't really have budget for extra tyres in testing, and that is the Porsche official test that, again, people don't really see never see on ITV, or the Friday race weekend tests. So the Friday race weekend brands had half a set of new tyres, and half a set that we carried over from a weekend before that were pretty much on mould lines. But we only have 2 left-handers on the circuit, so I put them on the right-hand side of the car. So where I thought I was from testing to the qualifying was, if I could make the time up in the 2 lefts by having new rather than a setup scrubbed on, then that would be the time that I needed to make up to pole, plus sorting one or two bits. So what I'm getting to is, in comparison to those that we've been battling with in the championship, Will, Seb and Tom primarily, when we are on a Friday test or a Porsche official test day, they've all had on a Friday test 1 set of new tyres at every test day, as far as I'm aware. I don't think there's anywhere they didn't. On every Porsche official day, where they had, again, at least a set of new, sometimes multiple sets of new. It's hard to know how many people have had, but every time you go out on a set of new tyres, it puts you into a position where you understand the car on a new tyre.
Yeah.
So quite often this year, my first time on a new tyre is in qualifying, and it also depletes your old stock. So if you keep refreshing with new every other time, your old tyres are better than somebody else's old tyres who doesn't have the new. So my old tyres were worse than their old tyres because they'd had some new ones that they brought into the cycle. So it also meant that the difference between my old tyre and a new tyre was a bigger delta gap. So when you're trying to go, in some cases, 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds a lap faster than you've ever been before, the lap changes. You're in different gears, you've got different braking points, different ways of taking the corner. And it is quite a challenge to try and adapt to that quick enough. And I think that's possibly been a bit of a weakness of ours this year, is sometimes I haven't been able to adapt to that quick enough in qualifying, or we've gone to the new tyre, the car balance has changed. Actually, the setup changes we needed to make for a new tyre weren't actually seen until halfway through qualifying, at which point you've only got one chance to make a change on it in a 2 or 3 minute pit window in qualifying, where you can only make so many changes because you only have 2 or 3 minutes, not a day to think about it or a bit of time. So sometimes these are the challenges that people don't see. So anyway, what your question was when we were at Druids, what kind of happened, what was the mentality? So we'd come from the start, race 2 start, I was like, I have to make a good start, and my start in race 2 was a rocket.
It was.
Will Jenkins got a mega start. A lot of people thought he jumped it, but he hadn't. Very, very good start. So he got away and off into the lead. I immediately did Tom Bradshaw before we'd even got to turn 1, and then got round the outside of Seb, and was round the outside of him going into Druids, turn 2 at Brands Hatch. So I was determined to try and get past Seb. More or less decided in my head I would wait for him to brake and then brake. And so went a bit wide in the middle of Druids, and when I cut back, Tom was there and I didn't really see him, and basically cut back and drove into him. I think from the telly, it probably looked like it was Tom's fault. From the onboards, it was quite clear that it wasn't. It was a racing incident at best. Maybe I could have been more aware of where he was. And I'm disappointed in myself for making that mistake, to be honest. But it was that then caused the damage to the car. And my mindset from there was I've just got to try and make the most of this situation. But I definitely had the feeling that at that point the championship was not gone, but
slipping away.
Yeah, slipping. And it's hard to go from a point where you've got a big points gap to a 1 point gap and starting so far back for the last race. But another thing that again people don't see and don't know is on the very, very rare time that anything ever goes slightly out of kilter on a Porsche, which is not very often at all. When we went to the weighbridge after free practice, we ended up getting like an error message on the dash. So it wouldn't all come up and flash red, but I would get like a red error message on the dash and some red lights at the side of the dash, which are usually like warning lights. And it kept coming on. I can't remember what it said, some kind of error message. And we've got a button on the screen that we can clear. But that happened at the end of FP2. So the first time I went back out on track with this dash flashing in my face was in qualifying, and I didn't really realise how annoying it would be until qualifying happened. So it did put me off a little bit in quali. And then in the middle of race 2, that message was coming on. It had knocked something out on the steering rack and the and like the power steering. So the power steering module kept having a failure via the system. So I had to keep clearing that error message and the other error message that was on. And the steering wheel was like this. So it was half a turn of steering out. And I think there was like the wheels on the car were massively towing all over the place. So I had no straight line speed and I just could not turn right, which around Brands GP is a nightmare. So yeah, it was a massive challenge. We finished well down the pack. Yeah, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. If I finished 4th in that race and where I finished in the last race, I'd have won the championship. But that's hindsight for you.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing. But you still gave it absolutely everything, and for one key moment, unfortunately, it cost the championship. But I mean, Seb Hopkins won it with 187 points, and you were second with 186. Like I said earlier, 1 point in it.
Yeah, I love the way that you nearly said you won it with 186. I could see it in your face.
Yeah, because
I mean, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but sometimes it really doesn't feel like it is. And I wish you couldn't have it in some ways. But it's pretty tight.
Once the races had happened, I mean, I know you were quite emotional for a number of days, and was it the Tuesday? I gave you a quick call when you were just on the way back, and you were still very emotional then. And obviously, and we know, obviously, everyone listening and watching this is they're going to have an idea of the emotions you've been through. But something like this is the result of 10, 15 years hard slog for yourself. And you've been through championship fights before. You've had those key moments, in the Clios and in Mini Challenge and Ginettas, and you've built a hell of a career.
Yeah,
doing what you're doing, which is driving fast and basically kicking backsides.
Yeah.
And to miss out on it must be absolutely gut-wrenching, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you.
Yeah, it really has been. And I think it's probably taken me best part of 2 months to kind of, I don't think get over it's the right word, because I'm not sure I have, but to kind of come to terms with it. I had the Porsche Awards a couple of weeks ago now, and I found that quite hard, actually. It is weird because it's an awesome evening, as when you look at what Porsche bring in terms of a hospitality setup, their awards dues along the same lines. It's a mega night, and it should be the sort of thing that you really look forward to going to, and as the result happened with the championship, kind of until the awards happened, I didn't really feel that. I felt sort of, I think that I don't want the second place trophy. I want to win, and I don't want that to come across as being ungrateful.
No. At the end of the day, you're a racing driver. You're competitive. That's the whole point.
Yeah, there's so many people who've gone, you know what? Everybody else bar Seb would kill to be in your position and be second, and it's true. But when you're second and you're so close to winning it, it's bloody hard to take. And I think, as you get older, and as you've been in more and more championship battles, each one gets harder to take to finish, not as the winner. I don't know how many times I've finished second in the championship now. It might actually only be the second time I finished second in the championship, but it feels like I feel like I should have finished second a few more times in Clio Cup. The mini years were a little bit of a disaster in many ways, but it doesn't get any easier. You appreciate the hard work that's gone into it to get to that point, and you think there's so much gone into getting to be within a shout of it. It's such a shame to miss out. And you also just appreciate how hard it is to be in that place, and to go and do it again isn't easy. And it isn't also, although the last 2 years, and I feel like I sort of do take being in a championship battle for granted, because I expect that level of performance out of myself. It isn't a foregone conclusion that you're going to be in a championship battle come Brands Hatch, but I kind of don't quite feel like it is, but that's the way I treat my racing. I'm disappointed if I'm not, and I expect myself to be in a position to fight for a championship. So yeah, it is. It doesn't get any easier. The talent is continually growing and rising, and the cost to be there don't get any cheaper year on year, and to have the support of fantastic people in the background of my racing isn't a given. So you realise how hard it is to be in that situation all the time.
And you've got some very good sponsors helping you out. You've got a great team, Graves Motorsport, behind you, and that have backed you all year. There's a few people that I want to mention, and it's why I kind of emphasised a bit about Croft being home, and that's your mum and dad.
Yeah.
And in the past year or so, I mean, the funny thing is, we saw a memory come up the other day of you bought a house in Mexico. You didn't really, but the way you put it, you bought a house in Mexico. So your lovely other half, who's had to, who you've met and got together with, and she's kind of seen the later Max years and the build up. But your mum and dad have been there from the start as well, and so
from the very start of time.
And how was it? How was that for you guys, sort of as a unit? Because obviously they've got your back no matter what.
Yeah, actually, the wider support team of people who've been involved in my racing has grown again this year. And it is, I would say, us four who were probably the closest to it. But there's so many other people that are close. I mean, I think that's what really touched me at the end of the season, is how many people were genuinely gutted for me. It's amazing to see. Like your phone call on the Tuesday afterwards, I didn't realise that it hit people as hard as it did.
It was
that was
to be honest,
that was quite a moving thing.
Well, no, to just interject there. So the reason, obviously, I'm an ambassador for Driven Minds, so I'm very much look out for any friends that. And what you've probably done has gone through a range of emotions that is devastating. You've been you're at the peak of sport, and you are part of one of the biggest British. You're at the echelons of British motorsport with the Toka package of British GT. You're on that level. You are in a Porsche-backed series. I view you as a professional racing driver, as I do the likes of Seb, Hopkin, and the other drivers you're racing against. You are professional racing drivers. You do this for a living. You pour your heart and soul into it, and you can see what you do, how you've done it for years, and how you've built it up from doing it with your dad to doing the Ginettas and doing it with Clios and Minis and what you've had to go through and the battles with sponsors. So all that phone call was on a Tuesday. I didn't want to know what happened. I didn't want to know what you feel you could have done different. I just wanted to know if you're okay.
Yeah,
that was the thing. But I could hear the emotion, and I get that. And
you can still hear it now. It's still there, and that's what I mean. Is I don't really feel like I probably have got over it yet. I was still gutted that I didn't, and it wasn't easy. It really wasn't easy, and it's probably been even harder in the aftermath to come to terms with it. So, it is tough, and it is what drives you further on. But definitely felt this one massively, and maybe even more than any others that I have in the past. I certainly think it's lasted longer in terms of its emotional feeling. But yeah, it was hard for all of us. We all definitely shed a tear. My mum and Emily go through it all with us. They sleep with it. They see the restless nights in the time before. They see the prep work, the emotions that happen afterwards. They see the tears in the back of the motorhome when nobody else does, and you just get, locked away and you just want to cry, So they see all that you try and keep away from the public facade. Although, some of that did come out at Brands Hatch, which I'm sure a few people saw, but there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
it's
absolutely not.
I'm an emotional guy, and it's very much a part of it all.
Absolutely. And to kind of turn it 180, has it kind of given you a bit of hunger going into next year to go, you know what, let's go and fucking do it?
Yeah, it has, and I think even more so. I think the thing that really
It's all right, dude. Take your time.
See, it still hurts now.
Yeah, 100%.
It doesn't even change. We are.
Yeah.
We're 2 months further on.
No, 100%.
It still has me in bits. Like, I want to win it so much. One of the things that really touched me this year, and I understand it even more now because I run my own team, is the emotional side that the team goes through. And I don't think I've ever understood it until this year. Gemma Graves, Carl Graves' wife, she was in bits. Carl was. Chris Diamond, Dave, everybody. And, there was I didn't realise how much it meant to some people. Clearly it means a lot to me. You can see that now. But I was genuinely so touched that those people cared enough to shed a tear. That it's a very powerful thing when you're racing. Something that a lot of people view as a hobby or a passion, or
it's
in my line,
it's sports
or professional. But it's amazing what it moves people to in terms of emotion. I've never been so blown away by the end of a championship as to this one, and in terms of what it means. Now I'm an emotional guy, as we've sort of already said, so I do cry. It does happen, but and everybody shows their emotion in a different way. But it's bloody hard. It still is now. Like, I want to win, and I don't think there's any way of showing that you want to win any more than this. So, I just hope that next year, we're in another position to go and win it, and I hope it does, because I think that the difficult thing is whether you win or lose, and even more so this year because I led into it, was I'd psyched myself up so much for the winning that whatever emotion I had afterwards, I still went through that euphoria, whether it was positive or negative, and it's always going to be huge in whichever way it is. So, like before building up to it, my psychology was like listening to in my head. I don't know how many times I'd played it through, but I'd watched myself walk up onto the championship podium, shake hands with Ian Fletcher, hear Alan Hyde over the audio going, Max Coates is a champion, and all that sort of thing. So like, it's amazing how much mental prep work you do to put yourself into a position where you physically and mentally feel good enough and ready to win a championship, and you go through that, and whether you win or lose, you sort of plateau on this thing and then have this massive spike of emotion, whether it's a good one for winning it or it's a bad one for not. And it's crazy because, like, you say it's a bad one for finishing second place in Porsche Sprint Challenge GB. It's a bloody awesome achievement, really.
It is,
but it's not quite winning it. So
no,
yeah.
it's not. But and again, I'll say something from the conversation, the brief conversation we did have a couple of days afterwards. This won't define you.
No.
This will not define you as a driver. No. Max, I've only known you for a couple of years since you've kind of got started with Graves Motorsport and worked with Graves, and I've always known you before as one of the guy I knew the most popular in terms of brand on the support paddocks in the British Touring Car Championship sort of sphere, the overall package. The way you come across as a driver and as a person, and the more I've got to know you, you're a wonderful human being and a bloody fast racing driver. Two of the best qualities you could probably have in life. So this won't define you, but 100%, the emotional roller coaster of getting so close and not quite getting there at the end. I can only cross all my fingers, because to be honest, I was coming back from Bicester Scramble. We pulled over on the A34 coming back from Bicester so I could watch that final race, and I didn't know what to say. My other half obviously knew I was a bit gutted, and to then hear about the team and everyone, you almost carry everyone on the journey with you, don't you?
Oh, totally. And everybody is. So yeah, it's a pretty, it was a massive emotional roller coaster. I mean, like the night before the Saturday night, we did start to get our onboards back in the latter half of the season. So Saturday night, I remember Chris Diamond, me and him were in the data briefing room at Graves. His wife called him. He'd usually have a phone call with her, I don't know, 8:30, something like that, after we'd all had food.
Yeah.
And he was just like, can I talk to you later, because I've got something really important to do. And me and him went through every single corner from race one, every single corner of the race, and we analysed. It was like, I've never done so much analysis, and anybody you listen to will say that I love looking at data. This was a proper, we were hour and a half to watch 20 minutes stint. Like, right, lap 3, turn 3, got to be later on the brake, or like there was 3 mistakes in a row there. That can't happen tomorrow. Got to think this. I can't remember all the stuff that we discussed in that briefing off the top of my head. But there was, that we went to town so much on it to try and win it. We really, really tried to muster everything we could to make it happen, and it just wasn't quite to be. So, to be fair, the last races and actually the first couple of laps were some of my best as well. Like come from 9th or whatever it was on the grid to 4th, and first lap or lap and a half, 2 laps something. And Ethan played a blinder. He had a great start going in front of Seb.
Oh, he
and
did.
I really thought it was, he started, tried to back him up, and then, as soon as Seb got through, he just let me go. So, I couldn't have asked for any more as a teammate from Heath. He did a fantastic job. And everybody kind of played on my side. There's a few drivers between me and Seb, and I'd sort of said like, please don't make it hard for me because I'm coming through. whether you like it or not, I'm coming through. So you're probably better off just getting out of my way because I won't be waiting around for very long. And everybody kind of did, and but yeah, it wasn't quite to be at the end of the day.
Well, that was 2024 Unwrapped, a very emotional episode. But I think at the moment we're going to take a break because we have got some questions for you to answer, Max. Now, you haven't looked at any of these, have you? Because I've made sure. Right. So, take a break,
Can I go
folks.
blow my nose?
Right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the final segment of this 2024 Unwrapped pod with Max, with you in the hot seat, not quite in the driver's seat, in the hot seat. So we've got some thank you to everyone that came on with the questions over Facebook and Instagram, and indeed some of the touring car groups that came in. So I'm going to start off with some of the Facebook comments here, and we've got the likes of Kaz Phillips and Leighton Hopkinson and the like. I think Dave Zeuscott's kind of asked that, but in a different way. So the first question is really asking about next year. Are you staying at Porsche next year? Kaz Phillips writes, and Leighton Hopkinson asked what your plans were for 2025. Any plans of entering the main BTCC?
Yeah, I mean, the touring cars for a number of years had been my goal and what I wanted to do. And actually, I think since joining Porsche in their championships, I think my goals on that have shifted slightly.
Okay.
So, I would say that my goal now is to try and get into the Carrera Cup.
Yep.
I would absolutely love to go and do Porsche Super Cup that supports Formula One. So I would say that is probably my now longer term goal. So the ideal thing would be to do Porsche Carrera Cup GB. It's kind of a longer term plan. The ideal would be to do Porsche Carrera Cup GB and support the F1 around in next year.
Yep.
That would be the goal. To do the same the following year, but possibly also one of the European Porsche Championships, with a view to doing one of the European Championships and the F1 Support Championship the year after. But that's a pretty lofty goal. It might never happen. It might happen. It might take a few years, more years than that outline to happen. But I would say that is now my my trajectory and goal. Maybe things will change. Maybe something will come up in touring cars. And maybe, and possibly even more so, I'd hope something would come up in the likes of GT racing for me to do some either pro or pro-am type racing. So I think the allure of touring cars has changed a little bit for me. over the last couple of years, and I think it's twofold actually. I think one is because I absolutely love racing the Porsches, and that is for a few reasons. The cars are fantastic to drive. They are now faster than a touring car in anything that you pretty much racing on a Porsche.
Yeah.
They are predominantly rear-wheel drive, which you probably enjoy more. And commercially, it works better for a few reasons. So, one, you don't have to explain to anybody what a Porsche is. Everybody knows what a Porsche is. Whether a lot of people have heard of British touring cars, not everybody, and actually probably more people know what a Porsche is actually, but you know, a lot of people know what British touring cars are. I'm not saying that they don't, but everybody knows about a Porsche, and the brand and prestige around it is significant. That does make it easier for speaking to sponsors, and the offering that you can offer within Porsche is actually less money than it is to do British touring cars, and in some ways is more attractive. And actually, from a commercial point of view, if you to go and race in British touring cars, it is actually a while since I've looked at a budget to go and race a British touring car. So I might be slightly out of touch with this, but I still think you need around the £500,000 mark
to be competitive. That's kind of what I've heard.
Yeah. Now you could spend that in Porsche Carrera Cup.
Yeah.
But you could equally spend quite a lot less than that. And to go and raise that sort of 500 level of funding, it is really difficult to do without a brand that wants to be on the side of a British touring car for advertising purposes. And by that I mean they're a brand that would benefit from having the brand on the side of a racing car. And to be honest, Primex make plastic sheets. JIC are a transport company. Plastech, predominantly but not all of what they do, they make things like showers that go into caravans and motorhomes. Dinsdale on my arm, they do road planing and driveways and roads and that sort of thing. So NGK spark plugs are possibly the brand that would actually benefit the most from being on the side of a racing car, but they haven't got a £250,000, £300,000 a year marketing budget to spend on doing so. It's far less than that. And to go and race in British touring cars, I would need to have somebody putting in £250,000, £300,000 as a title sponsor to occupy the main spots of being on a touring car. And I just don't have that in my sponsorship arsenal right now. So long-winded answer, but I'd still love to race in British touring cars, but it would require a very different type of sponsor to the ones that I have, and the ones that are more able to be converted on what sponsorship really, or a partnership, is really all about in motorsport. So yeah, hopefully the next couple of years will see me staying around the Toka package and being in Porsche Carrera Cup GB.
Fantastic. Well, Dave Zeus Cox actually asked, are you going to have a new teammate in 2025? So the aim is obviously for Carrera Cup. Let's change that slightly. Who would you have as a teammate? Would you want to get the Yorkshire duo back together and perhaps get Ethan next year again?
Yeah, I'd love Ethan to come to Carrera Cup with me. I don't know whether that will fit his plans. Who would I like to have as a teammate? Brad Gravitt is a good mate of mine who I enjoy spending time with. Is just a mate. But I suppose really I'm just going, who are your mates who race cars? That's almost what you're actually saying. Who would you actually like to have as a teammate? From a Porsche side, I would love to have Harry King.
Yes, he's just done Asia Le Mans series, isn't he? He's had his first time out in an LMP2 car.
Yeah, massive experience within Porsches. So not, I'm not saying that Harry King's not my friend, but from a development point of view in the car, then Harry King would be a great guy to have around. Probably Chris Diamond, actually, who's been my driver coach.
Yeah.
I think he'd be very handy in a Carrera Cup car, and I think we would bounce off each other really well. Or probably Charles Rainford, to be fair. He's been massively helpful to me in the Porsche package and racing, and I've seen firsthand his talents behind the wheel, and he's a guy that I get on with, so that would be good. But also, it'd be great to have somebody like him to learn off.
For anyone that is listening to this right now, if you get a chance, go on to CCK Motorsport on the socials and just have a look at the reels from about a month or so ago, because it is the funniest. I giggled the whole way through watching it, because it's Charles driving, you in the passenger seat, but it's just a start where he comes up, Max Guts!
Yeah. We had such a blast, and we've sort of been on about trying to do that for quite a while. Charles, I say, has been a massively helpful guy. There's been quite a few times this year where I've been and looked at his onboards and he's been and looked at mine. And because we're not competing against each other, we can sort of go, I do that corner a bit different. And although the cars are different to each other, there's a lot of traits that carry over between a Carrera Cup and a Sprint Challenge car. So, sometimes we can go, oh, actually, I try and carry a bit more speed through there, and I found it worked better than just sort of squaring it off and getting a better exit. So, there's been times where we have probably helped each other a little bit in what we've been doing. So it's great to get out with Charles. We had such a laugh, as you could see. But for me, it was such a privilege to go with somebody. I think in the video I said, it's great to go with somebody who's as good as you. But what I probably meant from that is that somebody who certainly in that car is above the level that I'm at right now, and aspire to be able to drive like what Charles was on that day at the start of next season. That would be great. But it might take me a little bit longer to get to that, I think. But Charles was mega. It was good fun, and as much as anything, like I say, it is actually really good to sit next to somebody who is so capable. I spent a lot of time in the passenger seat of racing cars, teaching people how to go faster. Yeah. It was great to spend some time with somebody who you're not coaching, you're just watching and learning and absorbing information from. And Charles was awesome for that. I really, really enjoyed that time and that experience.
Yeah, we're going to get him back on the podcast and have a catch up with him, because the first one was quite a good laugh. I think the next one we're going to have to get us all together in the same room, sit down and maybe have a beer and a bit of a giggle. That would be quite good.
See how his hairline's doing.
Right, back to Facebook. So Tanya Buckley asks, are you going to Autosport at Birmingham next year?
Yes, it's the plan to anyway. I'm hoping that Graves are going to be doing a little bit there, which will be good. So I'm sure they'll announce that at some point soon. But plan is to be there, and hopefully there for the duration for people to come and say hello. So we may or may not have some things lined up for Autosport Show. Right now we don't have things lined up for Autosport Show, but maybe by Autosport Show we might have some things lined up. Stay tuned on that.
Fingers crossed. This is quite a funny one. I know there's a similar question on Instagram that I am going to save separately.
Let me do with the hand.
Katie Eames asks, how did you scratch an itch on your arm while wearing the cast? Now let's just go back to wearing the cast.
Yeah.
You've just had to come out of an arm cast, Max. What happened?
Yeah. So I'm like a couple of days out of it now. I fell over in the wheelbarrow. Fell over in the garden. Fell over the garden pulling a wheelbarrow. I fell over. That's literally what happened. I fell over some step pulling a wheelbarrow up them. So yeah.
The funniest thing about that is, right, you race a Porsche at breakneck speed, side by side with other cars around the country, doing the most breathtaking and dangerous sport. Yep. How'd you break your arm, Max? Fell over a wheelbarrow.
Yeah. Literally. Yep. No, gardening's dangerous. Cars is safe. Stick to cars. That's my motto. So
stick to cars. Fantastic. How did you scratch an itch?
I didn't. Actually, I sort of just had to move it because they said you're not allowed to stick anything up it or down it. So I didn't. So I just tried to move it around, and now I've got some bits of skin that are falling off as a result. But anyway, that's lovely.
Lovely to hear.
The hand's not too bad. So this the hand. I can close it. I can wiggle my fingers. Everything's kind of pretty good. So. Still a little bit of pain, but it'll be all right come racing next season.
A bit of a light-hearted one from Martin Hopkinson. How long do I have to wait for a call back?
I've still not called him back. He called me on Saturday, so a little bit of time. And to be fair, it's probably a pretty apt question. I think I've probably still got 100 WhatsApps I've not replied to since the end of the season. And for anybody who's got to this point of the podcast, will maybe understand why. I found it quite difficult to deal with some of those messages, actually, even though the outpouring of support was very humbling. So that is something that I do need to do. But I do need to also call Marv back. Sorry, Marv.
Kevin Whitewood, I'd like to ask him which BTCC group is his favourite. Now, unfortunately, in this case, Dave Zeus Cox has then added to that, the Tom Ingram fan group, of course.
Oh,
and
yes.
Stuart Taylor has then added to that.
Oh, great.
And got
the battle of the fan pages.
Max Coates Racing only has one favourite, and that is the BTCC Yorkshire Army.
Yorkshire Army, and it's hard to stay away from that, really, if you're a Yorkshireman, isn't it? So that is, I suppose, that's maybe the political army, the political answer. But no, it's good. It's good to have them all and the support of them all. So I appreciate being on Kev's and winning the fan favourite of the year or fan driver of the year. That's it's something that goes into some of our sponsorship applications and isn't something that goes unnoticed. So I appreciate that, and I hope that I can maybe get on to do a few more Q&As and stuff next year. This year's just been a hectic, busy year for me personally, and I'd like to do a bit more into those social groups next year.
To be fair, it's probably something we could do together with the podcast and just do something live at the circuit with them and open it up to them. Maybe if you are listening, guys, by all means, get in the DMs for the Driving Talk podcast, and we'll arrange something going into 2025. Let's head over to
Driving Talk live. That would be good, wouldn't it? That would be good to do it.
That would be very good. That is the dream, to do that live at a race event. So maybe we'll work on something, Max. Okay. We're moving on to Instagram now. Rebecca Howland Photography. Her daughter Daisy wants to know, how did you get into racing?
How did I get into racing? So I grew up watching rallycross videos. That's what my dad did. He was into rallycross. So I grew up watching those videos. Absolutely loved them. And I guess that probably started my whole interest in it. I got a motocross bike when I was small, 3, 4, something like that. For Christmas one year, got out riding a bike. Mum decided it was too dangerous. Got into karts. Accidentally got my race license, apparently, according to my dad.
Wow. I
don't know how much of an accident that was. And then, the rest kind of all followed on from there. So, in a short word, in a short way, that's kind of what's formulated me into doing the racing that I'm doing now. I started out on little motocross bike and in karts.
Wow. From a motocross bike to Porsches. With a lot in between, I guess.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And I still did more damage pulling a bloody wheelbarrow.
Exactly. See, gardening, terrible, folks. Stay away from it. Project Vinny has commented, but he's kind of gone along the route. What are your plans for 2025? We've already answered those, but thank you for commenting there. Hadley Simpson got a couple of flame emojis from him as well, so he's going to be keen to listen to the pod. A great one here from Mari Pa. Which UK track and what track in the world is your favourite? So I want one UK track and I want one around the world?
So Brands GP would be my favourite in the UK.
Yeah.
I hope Tracy Morley from Croft hasn't got this far and into the podcast. I mean, saying it's not Croft, but it is Brands GP. And worldwide, I gotta go with one.
Go on. One. I know which one I'd pick, but yeah, you got to go with one.
I know, and I know which one you'd pick. You pick Bathurst.
Yes, damn straight.
Yeah, and I think for me it would be between Bathurst and the Nürburgring. I think just the fact that the Nürburgring is so long.
They are the top two worldwide, I believe.
Yeah.
But for me, Bathurst pips it. But that's just my because I'm a big V8s fan and I love Aussie motorsport and the way they do things.
I love what they do. But I would. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Nürburgring.
You're gonna go with the Nürburgring.
The full Nordschleife, not the GP track.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't. Yeah, you can't not go for the full Nürburgring.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great question there. Thank you very much. Now, Char Sarja, some great Insta names on here. Now that your hand is better, does that mean you can do the hoovering at home?
Yes. Yeah, well, Emily is going to be well chuffed with me because I've not done the painting again in the kitchen. So, as you mentioned, it's a year on. We moved in a year 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's been a bit of change. In the house, the garden's changed a little bit, but not quite as much as it had planned to. And then I'm on with the kitchen now. So there's been a fair bit of change, to be fair, and a bit more to do.
Fantastic. She did then go on to say, have you secured the funding and sponsorship to have another fantastic season of racing next year? We love watching you race. I think you more or less commented plan that, but
I mean, just on that, so I'd say we're probably we're on about 75% of the way there of budget that I'm 99% sure is happening. So there's a few people who've either given me a sort of a verbal or we're on or whatever, but not quite to the point where I would say we've been in a sort of signed contract sort of thing. But we're and that's a very, very good position to be in at this point in the season.
Fantastic. And we've got one more question here, which kind of tallies nicely to your recent exploits at Croft, because it's from username Numpty Harvey. What do you prefer,
Ryan?
Being a co-driver in a rally car or driving the Porsche?
Driving a Porsche. Although I'd love to swap and have a go in a rally car. But yeah, it was good fun the other week. Co-driving for Larry Carter. It's I tell you what, I proper bricked it. I thought I'd got the splits wrong on one of the laps. So ordinarily I'd been calling out the splits before we got there. So that was basically my job as a co-driver was left, right. It was pretty much all I had to do. And I'd done left on one lap and forgotten whether I'd done it once or twice. And I was like, oh no, I don't know whether I got this right or wrong. And I was bricking it for the whole way around. We pulled up behind the same car we started behind. And I was like, yes, I've got it right and messed up the whole rally by making one little mistake. So yeah, it's good fun. I'd recommend to have a go if you get the chance.
And you can go co-driving on your race license, correct? Or is there something extra?
Well, I did. I presume it was okay. I went on my race license. I'm not sure Brian, who is Numpty Harvey, should go and do co-driving, because I've heard he didn't feel very well after a passenger lap with one of my sponsors. So maybe not for Brian, but maybe for other people. Yeah, co-driving is pretty cool.
Fantastic, and what an experience. Well, Max, that was that's the questions rounded up there. So thank you very much to everyone that got in contact and sent in your responses. It's been quite a long podcast, this one, but it's good to see that, we're getting into Christmas. Soon we're going to be looking at what 2025 is going to be looking for all of us, really. But it's been a very emotional podcast for this one, Max, and just from me, thank you very much.
Hey, no problem. Just shows I guess we're not quite over it just yet. And yeah, hopefully I'll be happier with how the season ends next year. Even though I am happy with it, but 2024 has certainly been a challenge, and look forward to 2025 bringing so many more exciting memories in motorsport, many more podcasts, much more time spent at the racetrack, and look forward to seeing everybody when 25 comes around.
Fantastic. Great to chat to you, Max. And for everyone listening at home, don't forget to like and subscribe various bits on Spotify, YouTube, all the good things out there. We'll be bringing you more 2024 Unwrapped episodes in the coming weeks. But for now, from myself, Robert Lewis, and for the man that's gone from the driving seat to the hot seat this week, Max Coates, it's goodbye for now.